we go. Email.
Okay. I'm turning on the live.
Did you just send it now?
Tushar sent it.
Okay. And okay. Re-update it. And remind me what's going to be the name. I'm going to look it up by name.
Group Thera credentials.
It'll say group Thera credentials.
Okay, group.
Recording के लिए.
I haven't received it. Can you check the email? It's MARI.
Can you check that?
Yeah, MARIANADOIG@att.net. Hello. Okay, super. Yes, please.
Okay. YouTube Live and Facebook Live is now live. Room turned on.
Yes, please click on that. Yep.
Hello. Okay. And then join.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone. I'm audible?
Good morning. Good morning. So just a heads up, I have a 10 o'clock appointment. I'm sorry, I didn't. I guess we should have planned a little bit better about a time. I know that you're busy, but I have an appointment from 10 to 11.
What does that mean? The webinar is 10 to 11.
No, the webinar is at the webinar is at 12. I have the webinar being at 12.
Oh no, it looks like there's some confusion. It's at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11, and
Well, let me see if I can reschedule with this person, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, Flora. Good morning, Flora. 1-650-630-4616. Good morning, Flora. Good morning, Floor. This is Mariana from Gardner. We have an appointment today at 10 to do your intake. Floor, can you hear me? Can you? Yeah, this is Mariana. I'm calling from Gardner. We had an appointment today.
Arpita,
Hello, everyone. We're just going to be a couple more minutes, and I appreciate everyone joining. And
I have muted Mariana. Arpita.
right. So can you unmute her? I think she's trying to unmute.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was able to make the change.
I appreciate it, Mariana. So that we have participants which have joined already. So
Okay.
when you are, if you need a couple of minutes, that's fine. So we can get
Okay.
more people to join.
Okay. So let me just.
Arpita, screen share.
My screen share?
No, Mariana.
How do I screen share hers?
No. You will have to ask to start the screen share on our end.
Yes.
PPT presentation.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so should I do the share screen and kind of, or do you want me to?
Yes, Mariana. So let me know when you're ready, and then we can just quickly get started. I'll just tell the audience what to expect, and tell them a little bit about the webinar.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're just gonna give one more minute to more folks who might just want to log in.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Alpira Shah. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Psych Online, and I'm here to work with Mariana Doig, who's an LMFT at Trust Mental Health. And I want to give her a warm welcome to join us to provide a webinar on sleep. And over to you, Mariana. Thank you so much.
Okay, my pleasure. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you. Like Alpita said, I'm here representing Trust Mental Health. I'm going to start by introducing you to our group practice. We are accepting new clients in case you are interested. We are a team of diverse who go to our website. Every clinician has taken the time to describe the kind of work that they do, their specialty. We have a range of specialties, clinicians working with children, adolescents, families, couples, and adults. So that's my little plug for our practice. I am here to talk to you about solutions for anxiety-related insomnia. Like Alpita said, my name is Mariana Doig. I am a marriage and family therapist. I have been in practice for 20 years. I began my career working with families, children, and adolescents in different settings in different parts of the Bay Area. And now I work with adults. The clients that come to me present with a range of issues: anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, personality disorders. And it's very interesting how often they also have insomnia. So the range of people that struggle with insomnia ranges from 10% to 30% of the population, which is a funny number because there's such a big range. But a lot of people struggle with insomnia, and I suppose that led to my curiosity about what to do with it. Let me share with you what the plan for today is. We're going to look at the function of sleep so that you can better understand why be concerned about this. We're going to look at the dangers of sleep deprivation. We're going to develop together a working definition of insomnia. We're going to look more closely at anxiety so that you can recognize it and see if you have it in yourself. We're going to look at the connection. I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. I offer to make this practical, and so we will review sleep hygiene tips. And then I also plan a relaxation activity so you can go off into the day bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, okay? And perhaps if time permits, I don't know, there'll be time for questions and comments. This presentation that I'm doing is part of an introduction to a workshop that I will be holding. Let me see the dates. November 17th through December 8th. It's Wednesdays from 6 to 7 or 7:15, where we'll be able to apply these concepts a little bit more carefully and a little bit more individually for people that are interested. So moving right along, let's look at the function of sleep. I'm going to start by introducing you to my little friend. He is a red panda. Red pandas are native to the region of China and Nepal. These little critters are omnivores, and they're also crepuscular creatures, meaning that they're active during dawn and dusk. And these little tykes sleep up to 15 hours a day. So they sleep a lot. The reason that I picked this picture was, obviously, he looks so comfortable on the branch and he's adorable, but mostly because at first glance, when we look at it, we're struck by how nothing appears to be happening. He is still. Yeah. And so we may have that same kind of initial reaction about sleep. nothing seems to be happening, right? But if we think a little bit about it, what we notice that it's the first thing, right, about sleep. In sleep, our attention is not geared towards activities, to interacting with our environment. The energy is focused inwardly, to attend to important processes in the body. Among the important processes in the body are mental processes that happen. They're not conscious, but there's a lot of integration of information, of things that we were exposed to during the day, information, interactions. Information is integrated and downloaded. As a matter of speaking, it's processed. Not only is it integrated, but it's also reconfigured and repatterned in different ways. So sleep is very important in the process of learning and in the process of creativity. Sleep is also important because a lot of physical restoration happens in the body. Growth hormone is released. Cell, tissue, and organs are regenerated. Very important for the immune system as well. The body absorbs nutrients and amino acids and minerals while at sleep. And certainly it's very important in the process of mood management and the management of emotions. Dreaming is part of that process of processing events and processing emotions. And so when we have good sleep and we're able to give our body these things, we are regenerated at the level of learning and at the level of cells, tissues, and even at deeper, smaller levels. Let's look now at the dangers of sleep deprivation. The first one is obvious. There's a physical impairment. We're tired, right? We're fatigued. There's a cognitive impairment. We're foggy-headed. It's hard to think. It's hard to remember. Sleep deprivation can weaken our immune system. There's been studies that have been done with rats where they are deprived of sleep. And what happens is they develop lesions in their paws and in their tail. So while we don't understand the direct connection between sleep and healing processes, we link. There's a danger of hypertension, cardiovascular disease. Lack of sleep is very stressful. That's why people become cranky when we don't get enough sleep. So that leads us to the next. Mood and anxiety disorders can emerge when we have lack of sleep. In more serious cases, over prolonged periods of lack of sleep, people can develop auditory and visual hallucinations, even though they don't have a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And for individuals that have a diagnosis, it can emerge when we have diagnosis of schizophrenia. And for individuals that have sorry, I heard my voice or an echo. In individuals that have bipolar disorder, lack of sleep can lead to mania, which is a very painful, euphoric, impulsive state where they're often engaging in really dangerous or self-injurious behavior. So one of the first orders of business in working with individuals that have bipolar is tracking their sleep cycle and helping them get that more regulated. Sleep deprivation can lead to obesity and diabetes. We can see how that happens. We wake up tired, low energy. A lack of sleep can impact our impulse control. And so wanting to function, we reach for a donut or high sugary foods, and that becomes a habit. And we develop a weight gain and diabetes and more complicated health issues. And oftentimes we are not aware that there's an impairment. I want to give you some examples of real life dangerous results of lack of sleep deprivation. Probably if I mention the name of the Exxon Valdez, which was a tanker that hit a reef, and out of that, 11 gallons of crude oil spilled into the waters. There's Chernobyl, which was a nuclear meltdown, and then the shuttle Challenger that disintegrated 73 seconds after takeoff, killing everybody inside the ship. When there was a review to see what had happened in all those cases, the people in charge of important decisions had made mistakes. And why had they made mistakes? Because they had been sleep deprived. Okay. So let's look at what is insomnia. So insomnia is the inability to fall asleep, to stay asleep throughout the night, to fall back asleep easily after waking, and in the morning to wake up easily. Yeah, so there's a lack of flow in the sleep process. The person is not able to relax enough to enter the deeper states of sleep, which are the ones that are regenerative for human beings. There's 3 different types of insomnia. We have acute insomnia. Acute insomnia occurs when there's a life stressor. Examples of life stressors, it could be a job promotion, changes to your job description, changing homes, a fight with a loved one. And acute insomnia usually resolves over time, usually a month or 2, and the person is able to go back to their regular sleep and is not affected. Chronic insomnia emerges when acute insomnia does not correct itself. Yeah, it becomes a pattern, and not only a pattern of not being able to sleep, but then for the person, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Bedtime for them equals insomnia. Yeah, and it raises their anxiety level and becomes kind of a very tense situation for them. The last example is comorbid insomnia, meaning a comorbidity means occurring simultaneously. So as I mentioned earlier, with mental health diagnoses, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, it's very common to see insomnia in our clients. In medical situations, individuals that have COPD, GERD, rheumatoid arthritis, migraines, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, sleep apnea, restless leg, insomnia can also be co-occurring. My focus is really kind of insomnia related to anxiety. People's need for sleep varies. The Sleep Foundation recommends that for individuals between the ages of 18 and 64, 7 to 9 hours is a good amount. For individuals over 65, 7 to 8 hours is a good amount. But individuals are individuals. Again, the same foundation says that only these parameters only apply really to 65% of the population. Some people need less, some people need more. Yeah, and the way to know it is how you feel afterwards. If you wake up refreshed, energized, and kind of, with a good aptitude to face the day. I want to introduce the idea of biological clocks at this time as well. So sleep doctors, sleep scientists, classify people into either being owls or being larks. And maybe this is a term familiar to most of you. That these terms are trying to describe people's preference in terms of when they have energy and feel most alert. And that's connected to when the body secretes melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone the body secretes that encourages relaxation and sleep. And so for larks, Serotonin tends to be secreted earlier in the evening, say around 6 or 7. These individuals prefer to go to bed early, around 9 or 10, and they wake up at 6, even maybe 5, but they wake up ready to go, alert, and they feel they perform their best in the morning. So those are the larks. Now we have the owls, and the owls are people that prefer to stay up late, will get a second wind late at night. Their bodies tend to secrete melatonin later. And so they tend to want to go to bed later. It's not about a better than, it's about understanding what your type is to see if it matches with your lifestyle. So as an example, let's take an owl whose energy peaks around 10 or 11, 12, and they like to go to bed at 2 in the morning. Now, if they woke up at 6 because they have to be at 7, they're only sleeping 4 hours. Right? So that person should be checking in with themselves to see how that is working for them. Now, if that person, again, goes to bed at 1 or 2 and they have to wake up at 9, they're getting 7 hours. And so that in terms of lifestyle would probably be less stressful for their system. Yeah, so just something to think about as you're thinking about how you relate to sleep and when you have energy and feel most alert and most able to concentrate, and how that is linked to your schedule. Let's look at a definition of anxiety and how it might manifest. We can think of anxiety as a hyperactivation of the nervous system. It has cognitive elements, physiological or sensory elements, and also emotional elements. Some of the cognitive processes that we might notice when we're anxious is we're worried. There's rumination, so kind of revisiting the same thing over and over again. Racing thoughts, a tendency to think in terms of catastrophes. The worst is going to happen. A quality of overthinking. There's an emotional quality, a fear, kind of a sense of dread or danger, irritability, feeling panicky, a sense of apprehension or a sense of uneasiness. There's a sensory quality. We can feel agitated. We can feel that we have an excess energy in the body. Sometimes it's localized in the heart or the belly. We have lots of nerve endings and in these, not nerve endings, but nerve complexes in these areas. We can feel pressure in the chest, a sense of jitteriness. Our breathing becomes shallow. We can feel tight and tense. So these are things to monitor and notice. Anxiety can be related to temperament. And there's very little that we can do about temperament. Temperament has to do with how we're wired. It's part of our biology. And actually, temperament is a very interesting a field to study and be aware of. There are some individuals, for example, that are more sensitive, more prone to be melancholic, more prone to be reactive, but just more sensitive. And so these individuals are kind of predisposed to be anxious. That's not a death sentence. Again, it's just important to develop awareness about self so that you can make informed decisions. Anxiety can also be a learned behavior, something that as children, we looked at the adults around us and how they responded to stressors, and we mimic. We learn from the adults around us, and it's something that we pick up. Not only in terms of how we respond, but also to the stressor, but also how we cope with the feelings and the thoughts that are evoked. Oftentimes, when it comes to a clinical diagnosis and you talk to the client, what we see is that there was one or maybe several significant experiences for the client as a child where they faced a stressor without support. And so then what happens is they develop the beliefs that they don't have the capacity to cope. So they devalue their capacity to cope, and they overvalue the danger of the stressor or the situation. And so really that creates a really difficult situation for the person because they feel helpless. They devalue their ability to respond. They don't have the skills because at that time they didn't have the support. They were only children. And then they overvalue the threat. And so that carries over into adulthood, and the work of therapy is creating awareness around that and developing tools to develop trust in self, develop new skills to address those challenges, and then, of course, a lifestyle changes to learn to manage stress. Okay, all right. So let's take some time to look more closely at how the body reacts to stress. This information is out there. A lot of us therapists share with our clients, but it's very important to be reminded. It's a very fundamental process in human beings. A very strong predisposition to this, and it's very interesting to see look at this process closely. So we're going to start with the stressor, and a stressor can be a headline. It can be something somebody says to you. It can be something that happens at work. It could be a thought. And in this case, and in this class, it could be bedtime, right? And so we have the external stimulus, and we have a reaction. And our reaction is to get stressed. We tighten. Yeah. And so what happens when we react to a stressor with stress or anxiety? The body releases adrenaline and cortisol. Those are messages for the body to go into action. Yeah. So the heart starts beating faster. The internal processes, so the process of digestion, are not necessary anymore. We're moving into action. We're moving into fight, flight, or freeze. So our heart rate starts going up so that our heart can pump blood. The blood is pushed to the extremities of the body, to our hands so that we can fight if we need to our feet so that we can run. Our breathing becomes shallow. As part of this process, because this process is about survival, the increase in adrenaline and cortisol, it excites the brain and decreases our ability to be logical and rational. When it comes to survival, we don't need to be logical and rational. We need to go into fight or flight. That's how the body is thinking. Okay, that's how the body has been designed. And so there's a decrease in logical and rational thinking because we have more adrenaline and cortisol in the body. And there's also an increase of dopamine, and this leads to an increase in negative thinking and racing thoughts. So we have negative thinking, and we have a decrease in logical and rational thinking. Okay. And so, and that can become a habit, this way of responding to the stimulus and the stressor that we feel we don't know how to manage. I found this beautiful picture. I don't know what technology they used to take this magnified picture of nerve cells, but I wanted to share it with you to discuss this point again, but in a different way. Okay, so what we have here is a nerve cell, and these are dendrites, and information is transmitted through the dendrites. Yeah, and so every time that we have a response to an event, there's a chemical response, right? Earlier here, we talked about adrenaline and cortisol and dopamine. These are chemicals that transmit information to our body. So every time we respond to an event, there's a chemical response, okay? And the more we respond in a particular way, the deeper, the wider, and the thicker that connection becomes, because we use it a lot, yeah? So it becomes like a highway. I don't know where most of you are watching from. I'm in California, and we have this beautiful highway called 280, and I think it's 5 lanes at one point, right? So lots of cars can go really quickly. So these are the super highways. We can tell that this one has been used a lot. This one considerably less, and these not so much, right? So we can think of these big highways as habits, as set points, yeah, because we've used them a lot. And so when we're anxious or depressed, we have particular pathways that we tend to go down. And so when we're talking about therapy, when we're talking about needing or wanting to change things, the big thing is awareness, developing awareness, yeah, of our tendencies, of our knee-jerk reactions, of our habits. And so we can think of this as a fairly established habit. Yeah, I'm not, in the case of anxiety, I'm not going to manage. Yeah, or this is too scary, this is too overwhelming, or it's going to happen again. Yeah, and so why am I showing you this? Not to depress you, but to introduce another idea, which is the idea, which again has been much discussed, which is neuroplasticity. Yeah, that we have choices. We have the ability to learn new behaviors. We have the ability to make corrections and changes. And a lot of those things happen when we develop new habits, new ways of thinking, new behaviors. And so we might choose to come to a seminar on anxiety, way of improving your insomnia. We may listen closely to see, what we may do differently, so that when it's time for bed, if that's an issue for us, we may have other options, other choices. And over time, with consistency, we begin to develop other behaviors that feel as natural as this one. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at, before we go into some sleep hygiene tips, let's look at what could be some unhealthy strategies, okay? So also, individuals with anxiety and depression are more sensitive to stress and more likely to develop acute insomnia, which later then can become chronic. So that's an important thing to become aware of. So we may not know how to manage our insomnia. Yeah. We may decide that we're going to drink alcohol because that helps us relax. We may decide that we're going to go to the doctor and get medication, and that can help, but oftentimes medication, we develop tolerance to medication, and over time it becomes less effective. We may stress eat. We may lash out. We may start napping during the day, and that further disrupts our sleep. Or we may ignore our difficulties with sleep. So those would be examples of unhealthy strategies when we're dealing with anxiety and insomnia. So let's call our sleep hygiene concierge. Okay, let's give you some ideas of how you might want to, what you might want to be looking at and thinking at if you're struggling with anxiety or with some insomnia. So the first question is, do I have anxiety? And if I have anxiety, do I know how to manage it? Do I need to read books? Do I need to look at some YouTube videos? Do I need to find a coach or a therapist? Something more basic is, how am I thinking about this? What am I thinking about this? Again, if we think of the example of insomnia, when I think of my difficulty sleep, how do I think about it? Am I pessimistic? Do I feel like I can change it? Do I want to change it? What's my attitude? What's the attitude I'm bringing to the situation? So developing an awareness as to how I'm thinking about things. It's very important to have ways of resetting your nervous system. A very easy one, a very practical one is exercise. Very, very, very important. Another one is learning to relax. Relaxation is the opposite reaction of alarm and stress. It's the opposite. It's a different pathway. So very important to know how to relax. Usually very successful individuals, very driven individuals, type A individuals, they have a hard time knowing how to relax. So it's something that has to be learned intentionally. Time with no input. We live in the information age. We have all this information coming in all the time. So time with no input. Of course, time with friends and family, because human beings need each other, and actually social contact regulates our nervous system as well. We've been through a pandemic, a time of a lot of isolation, a lot of stress also in our country in terms of politics. I know a lot of relationships have been impacted, and so human beings are sensitive and wired to being aware about how you're being impacted by things around you. These little devices have a blue light that's emitted, and this blue light excites the brain. So no cell phones, no laptops an hour prior to bed. Try not to exercise 4 to 5 hours before bedtime, especially if you notice that you feel energized and pumped up afterwards. Don't go to bed if you're not sleepy. Being fatigued is not the same thing as being sleepy. If you are struggling with insomnia, it's very important that you only go to bed when you're sleepy. What do? Pick a boring book. Find a poorly lit area in your home and read until sleep comes, and then go to bed. Avoid caffeine, of course, up to 8 hours before sleep. Avoid tobacco 4 hours before bedtime. Avoid alcohol. A lot of people think that alcohol actually helps. It might help you initially relax, but oftentimes people wake up 4 hours after falling asleep, and really it doesn't allow you to access the deeper REM states. Make sure you eat breakfast. Breakfast cues your body to wake up. Prepare the body for sleep 30 to 45 minutes before bedtime with calming activities. If you're a parent, you know what you do for your kiddos, right? You have a routine, whether it's play, dinner, a bath time, story time, and then bedtime. Adults need the same thing. We need to have habits that begin to cue us that we're slowing down. Things like taking a bath with Epsom salt, putting some lotion, listening to calming music, reading maybe inspirational material, prayer, but thinking of what can I do to feel like I have a transition that slows me down, doing some gentle yoga stretches. So thinking about your sleep routine. Sometimes the sleep problems have to do with very practical issues. Is your mattress comfortable? Is your bed comfortable? Do you have nice sheets? Is it pleasant to get into bed? What's the temperature in the room? Sleep doctors recommend a cooler room, that people tend to respond and fall asleep and feel more comfortable in rooms that are a little bit cooler rather than warmer. The light What kind of curtains do you have? Are they effective in blocking the light from the street? Some people like music or white noise in the background. So thinking about that. If you're struggling with sleep, something to look at is, what is your association to bed? What are the activities that you do in bed? The bed should be for sleeping. It should be for intimacy and when you're sick. Nothing else. Nothing else. So it's not for working. I don't know how many movies I've seen where the couple is in a huge bed and they have their laptops. Yeah. So look at these things and see if any of them apply to you. Okay. So let's look at more specifically CBT tips for insomnia. CBT is an acronym for a therapy approach called cognitive behavioral therapy. In essence, although it's very thorough, in essence, what it acknowledges and it helps people become aware of is our thoughts have an impact on our feelings and on our outlook. So there's a lot of attention to how am I thinking about this situation. And also part of CBT are very practical skills. Yeah. So for example, let's take a look at the first example, learning to reframe the situation. How am I thinking about my insomnia? What is it like, when I'm in bed and I begin to notice that I can't fall asleep? Do I immediately become stressed? I'm going to have another one of those nights. Yeah. So what's the frame? The frame is our thinking. How is my thinking framing the situation? What would be a better reframe? Right. So if you came to my class, I would help you with that. And one of the better reframes is, we're not going to think, we're going to focus on our relaxation. Yeah. Setting small goals, small behavior changes. Yeah. So I'm hoping that this list gave you things to think about. And so an example of making a small goal might be that you are going to make an effort of not being on your phone an hour prior to bed, and you're going to do that for 21 days straight. And then you're going to see the impact, if any, on your sleep. Okay, so starting small, but being consistent and seeing the impact, not feeling overwhelmed. A lot of us have so much on our plate. And so learning to set small goals and tracking the impact. Learning to identify the locus of control. That's a very important one. And this applies for insomnia, but a lot of these you're going to see apply to other issues as well, right? So learn to identify your locus of control. Our locus of control is, where do I have agency? Where can I impact change, right? Maybe something happened at work and I'm in bed thinking about it. Can I do anything about it? Not really. Yeah, but I can have a good night's sleep so that I wake up, refreshed. And who knows, maybe because I slept well, I will get a dream that will give me a solution on how to address it. Yeah, so learning to identify your locus of control. Again, this is about locus of control. What are the things that I can do in my lifestyle that will support me? Developing a realistic appraisal of time, creating buffers, and planning. So for this one, what I'll share is I made sure that I had plenty of time before this presentation and after this presentation, because there's always surprises. Yeah. And again, more and more as technology takes over our life, that seems to become the model. right? Just speed and efficiency and faster and more. And that's part of our zeitgeist. But very important to realize how that affects you, and that we still exist in days that have 24 hours, in weeks that have 7 days, in years that have 12 months. So time is real. So developing a realistic appraisal of time, creating buffers, and planning accordingly. Learning to be assertive, setting boundaries, staying in the present, avoiding catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is the quality of imagining a worst scenario. So in the specific case of sleep, we might say another night that I'm not going to sleep. That's an example of catastrophizing. Yeah, and it's also future tripping. There's lots of ways of thinking that aren't helpful, right? So staying in the present. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to practice the relaxation activity that Mariana taught me. I'm going to focus on my toes. Yeah. I mentioned earlier learning relaxation skills and integrating these into your lifestyle. That's one of the big pieces that we're going to be learning in the class, in the workshop, how to relax. Again, so that we're we're developing that skill, and also learning to focus on where we have a locus of control. Very important. Mindfulness, it can be very helpful. It combats the mind's ability or tendency to wander. Exercise is super important. It's a very practical thing to recommend to clients. And part of CBT is exploring beliefs that don't serve you and trigger anxious thoughts. Okay, so these would be some of the things that I would cover in more depth in the class. I hope that you have found this informative, that you have found something, at least one thing that feels useful. And what I would like to do now is I would like to transition to a relaxation activity so that you have a taste of one of the skills that we would be learning in the group. Okay. So to do this activity, what I'm going to invite you to do is to make sure you turn off your phones, that you're in a location that is safe. And what I mean by that is that you won't be interrupted. And maybe that's I would like to ask that you be in a chair that supports your back and that your feet have access to the ground. So making sure that you do that. Okay. Your hands can be on your legs facing down or up, whatever feels most comfortable to you. And we're going to begin this activity by bringing our awareness to our eyes. And I'm going to invite you to let your gaze wander. Okay? I would like to invite you to have your gaze just wander and have your eyes just explore the environment that you're in. And notice what catches your eye. It might be a color. Okay. I'm going to encourage you to focus on things that are pleasing to you, but just let yourself relate to your environment through your sense of sight. Taking in objects, taking in the quality of light, using your sight as a primary mode of perception and engagement. From your sense of sight, I'm going to invite you to focus on your sense of hearing and make that the primary source of focus and engagement, and begin to notice the sounds in your environment. Begin to notice the direction that they're coming from, the quality that they may have, whether they're staccato or slower, whether they're pleasing or not, the direction that they're coming from, whether they're recognizable or not. And see if you can See how sound shifts to vibration. So sound can have an almost tactile quality. So as you listen to your environment, listen for that tactile quality of the vibration. And if it feels comfortable, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes because we're going to move into the sensation of touch. Okay. I would invite you to focus on your toes. You have 10 toes. And I would like for you to take the time with each toe to push them against the ground, one by one. Slowly. Sensing your contact with the floor. Finding the balls of your feet and pushing down against the floor. Finding the arc of your foot. Finding your heel and noticing how your foot rests completely on the floor. Scanning up to your ankle. Bringing your attention up to your calves and shins. Finding your knees. And when we get to your knees, kind of imagining that you can feel the energy kind of pooling and swirling like a spiral. That energy of its own accord moves up your thighs in the direction of your belly. And when you get to your belly, you're going to invite it to soften. You don't have to force it, it's just an invitation. And as you invite it to soften, notice what parts of your body move as you invite it, your belly to soften. You might notice that your breathing becomes deeper, perhaps. You might notice that your rib cage expands. Maybe you notice that the area in your heart softens. So the focus is just to sense the ground and continuously just gently invite your belly to soften and to connect with the inhalation and the exhalation. And the sensations that come from that. Sometimes we may feel a sense of warmth. And with that sense of warmth, we may feel a sense of well-being. If you find that you're thinking, I want you to go to your toes again, okay? And you're going to take your time and press down on the floor, sensing the floor and how it supports you. So you find your toes, you find the balls of your feet, you find the arc of your foot, you find your heel, find your ankle, find your calf, your shins, your knees. And we get to the knees, we pause a little And we imagine that there's energy coursing as a spiral, and we sense into that. It can be pleasant to imagine that. We're sensing our blood flow. And we allow our attention to move up our thighs. We sense our sit bones against the back of the chair. We find our belly. Oftentimes when we're tense or anxious, there's a tightness in our belly. So sensing into the belly, we're not forcing anything to happen. We're connecting with self. We're inviting the belly to soften, and we're noticing what's happening. I'm going to count from 1 to 10, and then I'm going to bring you out. Okay? You don't have to rush. All you have to do is, if you find that you're thinking, you're going to go to your toes. Okay? If breathing and connecting with your belly has felt okay, you're going to stay connected to that and just enjoy that. So I'm going to 1, feeling grounded. 2, feeling present. 3, coming back to self. 4, feeling more aware of your breathing. 5, feeling a sense of calm. 6, feeling alert. 7, 8, feeling ready for the day. 9, beginning to wiggle your hands, your fingers, your toes. Yeah. 10, opening your eyes when you're ready. Kind of tracking the impact of this, if there was any impact. It was a little shorter than I would have liked it to be. I want to thank you for your time. I have some resources here for you. The information that I have for this presentation I got from the sleep workbook. As I mentioned, I'm running a group starting on, I apologize, the dates are wrong here, but it's starting November 17 for 3 weeks, 6 to 7:15. If you're interested, please go to Trust Mental Health. Thank you very much.
Hey, Mariana, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation on the sleep and insomnia. It was really informative. I have a lot of things to take back myself, and the meditation was just wonderful. It's such a great start to the day, So I just want to open the floor for any questions. If anybody has any questions, please type them into the message box. And I was curious, Mariana, you mentioned about one that we could do CBT with the insomnia. Do you know if we could apply any other therapies such as EFT?
So in general, all therapies are teaching people to understand their emotions and how when we don't manage our emotions, they get reflected in a cognitive distortions or tension in the body. Yeah. So any approach that helps you address those things will help you.
That's fantastic. Is it recommended to club any of these therapies like CBT with EFT as well as REBT all combined, or you recommend keeping it?
What is REBT?
So it's basically a form of behavioral therapy. It's a reverse EBT.
Okay. I am not familiar with EBT specifically. My expertise has always been holistic, and more of a focus on the body mind. And so my recommendation is always going to be to start with the body. Exercise, yoga, meditation, a stress, and actually we can think of sleep as a manifestation of the body's difficulty relaxing. Yeah. So any approach that's body mind based on my experience, it would be what I would recommend. If you have knowledge of those modalities, it makes sense to me that you could recommend it to the participants today. But I guess I feel more comfortable recommending the tools that I know, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the sleep suggestions that you have made is wonderful. We generally land up sleeping right after checking our phone, or what the updates are, or what the news were. So definitely keeping that 1 hour gap for 21 days is something I'm gonna definitely try for the next few weeks.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess currently I want to thank you so much for your time. And if there are any questions that come up, I can email them to you. Currently, there are no participant questions that have come up.
Certainly. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.